Today I'm flying up to Shanghai from Adelaide here in South Australia. Now obviously there's no direct flights up to Shanghai from Adelaide, however there are international connecting flights via Guangzhou, Hong Kong and Singapore with China Southern, Cathay Pacific and Singapore Airlines. On this occasion though, I'll be flying with Qantas. So firstly over to Sydney and transferring to the international terminal, and from there the 10-hour journey to Shanghai begins. If you wish to skip the domestic flight over to Sydney, you can fast forward to this time below. Adelaide Airport is located 6 kilometres from the city and what I believe to be the most centrally located airport in Australia. Terminal 1, which you see in this video here, was completed in 2005 and sees over 8 million passengers pass through each year. As this was filmed in July 2019, Adelaide Airport is currently expanding the terminal to upgrade international departures and arrivals and create more retail and dining options for domestic and international travellers. Now since I arrived at the airport a little later than usual on this occasion, I was short on time to film with inside. However, once I checked in my luggage, I passed through security and headed straight to gate 24, which had already commenced boarding.
My name is John Dickinson. I'll be a customer service manager for this sector. Graham Hood is your captain today and the first officer Ryan O'Connor. Just waiting on the last remaining passengers and paperwork to arrive, then we'll be out for long.
Looks like a nice day to go flying. We are expecting a smooth ride over to Sydney, and the weather in Sydney itself fine and sunny, temperature around 13 degrees for our arrival. On behalf of all of us here at Qantas, thanks for flying with us and thank you for your patience. We'll get you moving as soon as we can.
About 20 minutes after takeoff, we were welcomed with a nice sunrise as we headed east to Sydney. Around this time, I was handed breakfast, which included a fruit cup, a biscuit, and some berries, along with a bottle of water. Now I have celiac disease, which means I need to go with a gluten-free option. However, the meals for the majority of passengers was relatively similar. The only difference is theirs included a bacon and egg wrap. Before we knew it, an hour had passed and we already had begun our descent into Sydney.
where the local time is approximately 12 minutes after 8. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign has been turned off. As a reminder, smoking is prohibited whilst disembarking.
We touched down in Sydney 1.5 hours after takeoff in Adelaide. After disembarking, I headed straight to the transfer gate to make my way over to the international terminal. The Qantas transfer buses run every 10 minutes, and the queue can get quite long, so I had to wait for a second run to board the bus. Once I arrived at the international terminal, I went through customs and made a somewhat walk/jog to the boarding gate, just in time before final boarding call. I think next time I'll stay in Sydney the night before, as my flight over from Adelaide made Tommy very tight and left me no time to look around the international terminal.
Puffed out.
In a bit rushed, eh? You're good now.
Appreciate
You cross over and turn right, you're on the window.
No worries, thank you very much.
Customer Service Manager Scotty and all the crew, it's my pleasure to welcome you aboard. Scotty just mentioned we are just waiting on one more passenger to join us. Still got a couple of minutes to go before we are due to depart. When we do head off, we'll be taking off towards the city, left-hand turn after takeoff. As we set course out of Richmond, Kurrajong, Blue Mountains, as we climb the cruise, initially at 32,000 feet. Planned flight time of 10 hours, which is quicker than normal. That should have us into Shanghai ahead of schedule. Time in Shanghai now is just going 28 minutes past 7 in the morning. And our scheduled time arrival into Shanghai is 6:25.
Cabin crew, arm doors and cross-check.
Choose Qantas, the spirit of Australia. 拉紧带子，即使带子没有膨胀，也会有氧气流动。
Cabin
gentlemen, Scott, your customer service manager. We are still climbing out of Sydney and the seatbelt sign is still on. You must remain seated with your seatbelts firmly fastened.
Not long after takeoff, meal service commenced, and I was handed my gluten-free meal. As mentioned previously, I had celiacs. It included pork with mushrooms, potato and beans, along with dried fruits, bread and a small chocolate and almond cake for dessert. Here is the menu for passengers without dietary requirements. Two hours into the flight saw us tracking over northern Queensland and inline for the Gulf of Carpentaria. Close to 3 hours into the flight, we tracked over the coastline heading north over the Gulf of Carpentaria. At this time, lights in the cabin were dimmed and eventually fully darkened. It stayed this way until about 1 hour outside of Shanghai. I felt somewhat awkward trying to open the shade from time to time to film. However, it is a day flight and I wanted to film and enjoy the journey. The sleepyhead next to me though would have probably preferred another neighbour. Five hours into the flight marked the halfway point, and at this time we passed over the equator and into the northern hemisphere. Just under 7.5 hours into the flight, we tracked directly over the Philippines capital of Manila. Unfortunately, I couldn't film any views as there was a large amount of cloud cover. At this time, dinner service commenced and I had a chicken, spinach and rice meal. The chicken was in a nice creamy cheese sauce and is definitely one of the better meals I've had during my travels. Closing in on the end of the flight, we tracked up alongside the Chinese coast over Shantou and Xiamen. As you can see, there was a lot of cloud cover coming up the coastline towards Shanghai, and it stayed this way for the remaining 2 hours. Nine and a half hours after departing from Sydney, we commenced our descent into Shanghai. We touched down in grey and murky Shanghai, 10 hours 5 minutes after leaving Sydney, or 2 minutes past 6 local time in the evening.